am I? Why am I getting a run?
Program, you come up on the platform.
At my front.
Platform, please.
Well, showing cause here.
Reckon it'd be best for us to
Guinness. Some of you guys that are standing up over here, there's about 12 or 15 seats over here to the right. It's going to be a long program, not real long. We're here for a very special event. Those of you that are still talking, we can come up to the microphone and share some of your experience. I would like to introduce some important people and dignitaries who've been on our Life College program and who are on the DE program that are in the audience. Dr. Fred Barge, former board member of the Palmer College of Chiropractic and our current lecturer. Fred, where are you? Somewhere around. Happy to have you with us at this occasion, Fred. Dr. and Mrs. Russ Earhart, would you stand up, Russ? Distinguished colleague. Dr. Gerald Plum and Mrs. Plum. I don't see Kathy right at this time. Dr. Plum of Life West. Dr. Furr of the Activator System. I see you back there in the back. Stand up, Dr. Furr. All of you who attended at Palmer College during our distinguished guest tenure of instruction at Palmer College will remember Dr. Maury Denayo, and his wife is here tonight, and Deanne McClure, the only daughter of Dr. and Mrs. Maury Denayo. Would you stand up back there, Mrs. Denayo? Where are you? Welcome. And to have you, we all remember your husband and treasure his friendship and relationship with us. Doctors Pete and Pete, who were with the ICA when the festivities began about 15 years ago, were on the road. Helen and then Nelson, please stand up. Pete and Pete. Former board chairman of the Georgia Chiropractic Association, former Palmer College alumni president, Dr. Cecil Grogan. Would you stand up, Cecil? Those of you others that I have missed, please forgive me. We're here for a very special occasion. We're here to honor one of our colleagues and one of our dear friends and our former instructor. In fact, we're here to honor two people. It hardly seems possible that this gentleman has been in chiropractic for such a long and distinguished career. And to be here on July the 26th, 1984 in Marietta to celebrate a 75th birthday of our visitor, Dr. Clay Thompson, and his lovely wife, Peg, who we count you as one with spirit. I can remember Clay over the years as being a very enthusiastic person who, like a star across the sky, gave a bright light to all whom he met and had contact with at the Palmer College. He was all chiropractic. That was the main thing and the main point of emphasis. He was all enthusiasm. I mentioned today he was all salesman. Clay doesn't let you sell him, he sells you. And he's had such a warmth about him and a spontaneity and enthusiasm. I used to, in all friendships and love, if you've been around Clay for a long period of time, he'll be talking to you and motivating you and activating you and stimulating you with his hands. I had a spider monkey one time. And a spider monkey has a tail about 2.5 or 3 feet long. I'd walk by my monkey's cage and it would run its tail out, and the most delicate, sensitive touch that little tail would have, it had a million little muscles in that little tail it could feel with. And every time I have felt the monkey, and I thought of the monkey over these years, the monkey's tail that is, I thought of Clay and the sensitivity. Reminded me of an elephant's tusk. You know, they say an elephant's tusk has the sensitivity and the musculature of 400 muscles in its trunk, so that it can pick up a single grain off of the ground. Has the capacity of giant tons of flesh. Has the sensitivity. Well, our person that we are honoring here tonight has that sensitivity, and not only with his delicate and sensitive touch, his acute and sensitive mind, but all his being has that acuteness. I remember when Dr. Nell and D.D. and I were in one of Clay's classes, and we had some senior students. We were, just happened to be there. We weren't seniors at the time, but there's 2 or 3 of these, Clay used to call them smart asses. They were gallivanted up on the front row and sitting up in the lecture room with their feet propped up and smoking on the front row. And they were just glancing around, and Clay was going into a procedure. What you going to do when you graduate? What are you going to tell them? And you know that little quirk in Clay's mouth, he'll get to saying something, he'll kind of wiggle and wrinkle before he'll say something. Well, he just did it in his way, and his mouth come to the focus. He said, well, he had a little mustache at that time. Still got it. It's a different color, I can assure you. He and I have one thing in common. Our mustaches turned gray for some reason. So Clay said, so you know what to tell the patient when you graduate. You've got all the learning and the salesmanship here. And the guy said, we don't need any salesmanship in chiropractic. I'm a doctor. So Clay said, lips puckered up, said, well, just come up and tell us what you're going to say to the first patient that you see. And give him the seat. And Clay was the instructor, but they knew more than he did. He set him down behind the desk to come up. Clay said, well, I'll be the patient. Clay sat down as the patient. He got to lean back in his chair, pulled out the desk, propped his foot up on the desk, pulled out a pack of cigarettes and said, have a cigarette to Clay. Clay said, well, no, I don't smoke. He said, well, what can I do for you? Clay said, well, I want to come to the chiropractor. The guy said, well, just come right on back. I'll take you back to the x-ray room and we'll x-ray you. Then Clay sat there a few seconds. And he said, well, what else? The guy said, that's it. Clay said, you mean that's all you've learned in all these years, all the thing I've been teaching you this whole quarter? The guy said, I don't agree with you. I don't think you need to do it. I don't think you need to sell. Well, that guy lasted at least 3.5 months in Georgia. Went to Alabama and flunked out there too. Went back to Mississippi unlicensed and flunked out there too. And finally went back into the vacuum cleaner business. So I guess he knew more than Clay over the years. I used to watch Clay go around the campus. One time, you know how he'll put his arm up around you and talk to you and love you along and walk until he gets what he wants. Or he finds out what he wants to know. And every now and then you'd see him standing around talking to BJ, and they'd be in a conference or something, standing on the corner, standing out by the street or on the tree. He'd be walking with Dean Hendrick. Now, Clay wasn't always the most popular person on campus because he had a way with the boss, with BJ himself. BJ had a great and mutual respect for this gentleman tonight because he recognized his innate wisdom, He recognized his great capability to live in the moment, to speak in the moment, and to be able to project himself divinely or innately. And he had a way of loving. So he had a little bit of the jealousy of his colleagues because of that trait. So Clay, it's a great honor for us to host your 75th birthday celebration at Life DE. It's an honor to have known you over these years. It's been an inspiration to all whom have known you and all who have misunderstood you over the years. But after all, when a person has an idea or a dream, or he invents something or manufactures something and he creates it, if he loves it, if he respects it, he appreciates it, he's enthusiastic about it. And a lot of people don't understand that. They didn't understand it. But for those of us who appreciate an innate philosophy and an innate way of life, we have all loved you and all respected you. And I'm sure that this group shares with me and Dr. Nell and Dr. Umber, with the other friends who will be speaking in your behalf tonight on your 75th birthday anniversary. We all want you to know how warmly we have loved you over the years and how much we've truly appreciated you and how much your creative genius has meant to the profession. By taking this, lifting a little bit of the burden from the practitioner and giving a little bit to the patient to make the adjustment procedure easier, to give the innate response of the body a more effective mechanism for doing its work. Not only has Clay's inventive genius helped the patients, it's going to save the lives of chiropractors from now on into the future, and all those who see the wisdom of his work. So to begin our festivities tonight, we want to do 3 cheers for our beloved friend, Clay Thompson. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! The first gentleman I'd like to introduce tonight, I would like to say that those of you in the audience who appreciate Clay, those gentlemen that have known him over the years, if you have something that you wish to say, even though you're not on the program, you're welcome. So the first gentleman I'd like to introduce tonight, who will introduce his delegation, is Mr. Frederick Coggins, the Vice President and General Manager of the Williams Manufacturing Company. Frederick, would you come up, please? Frederick Coggins.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Clay, I'm honored to have the opportunity of representing Williams Manufacturing at your 75th birthday. I'd also like to thank Drs. Sid and Nell Williams, Dr. Dee Umber, and Dr. Bill Willis for giving us this opportunity to share this occasion with you. And while we're celebrating your 75th birthday, we're also celebrating Williams Manufacturing's 65th birthday in the manufacturing of Zenith chiropractic tables. Your close relationship started with Williams Manufacturing more than 20 years ago, when we fortunately, for us, agreed to manufacture the Thompson table that you had designed. As a result of your teachings and the unique benefit of the Thompson technique and table, over 10,000 Thompson and terminal point tables are currently in use throughout the world. You have contributed significantly to better health for patients, improved success for doctors, and greater prosperity for Williams Manufacturing. As a result of your effort and the loyalty of many doctors in this room. Williams Manufacturing this year enjoyed the finest year in its history. We manufactured and sold more Zenith tables this year than ever before. You'll also be interested in knowing, Clay, that Williams is continuing to grow. This year we'll be introducing 3 entirely new table products, including a Zenith Cox table which we'll be manufacturing in cooperation with Dr. James Cox later this year. We feel the best birthday gift we can give to you is to say that Williams is committed to seeing to it that the Thompson technique continues to flourish by continuing to provide state-of-the-art equipment to the profession and supporting the technique in colleges like Life College. However, the commitment that I've just made to you is not something that you can display on your bookshelf. And so we have something for you to do that. But before I present it to you, I have to give you a new definition of the word tough. Tough is trying to find an appropriate gift for a doctor like Jay Clay, who has DE in your heart, a Mercedes in your garage, a Stradivarius in your closet, a Thompson table in your basement, and Peggy Thompson taking care of you. Now that's a tough assignment. Just the same, we have Greg Williams, who's our Vice President of Sales at Williams Manufacturing, and Jim Moulton, who's in charge of our Thompson Workshop program, who would like to make a presentation to you as an expression of everyone at Williams Manufacturing affection for you and esteem for you. Greg and Jim.
We have a plaque for Dr. Thompson, which is described J. Clay Thompson, D.C., with appreciation and affection from everyone at Williams Manufacturing on your 75th birthday, July 8, 1984. And as Skip mentioned, it's very difficult to find something for a person who has everything. With a great deal of love, we happen to come across something we hope you'll enjoy.
Feels like my mother-in-law in there. That's gorgeous.
Favorite hobby, Clay, besides chiropractic?
That is cute. Thanks, Kitty. Words fail me, and that's unusual for me. I like to tell you that the only time this has happened in the past is when my dear beloved BJ had his 75th, which he got a gold Cadillac. all I get's a plaque. I'll tell you, a lot of doctors don't listen when the patient's talking to them. Take the story, for instance, the other day of the farmer that went in to the veterinary and said, "I've got trouble with my cat. He's constipated." And the doctor said, "Well, nothing to that. We'll take care of that right away." So he couldn't listen. So he sorted out a couple of pills about this big. He said, "You give these to him and everything will turn out fine." He said, "Those are kind of big, aren't they?" "No, that's right." So he's back in the doctor's office about 3 or 4 days after that, and he said, "We got a problem with that cat of mine that you prescribed the medicine for." He said, "Cat? I thought you said calf." Didn't listen. Well, he said, "How's the cat getting along?" Well, he said he has 9 cats working for him. 3 of them are digging holes, 3 of them are covering them up, and 3 of them are looking for new territory.
Next speaker here is a dear friend of ours and a dear friend of DE and a dear friend of chiropractic and a dear, dear friend of Dr. J. Clay Thompson, one who is carrying on the work and doing a marvelous job at it. Dr. Joe Stuckey. Would you come up, Joe?
Thank you, Chief. Dr. Nell, ladies and gentlemen, friends of Clay Thompson, distinguished guests. This is really a pleasure for me to have this honor and opportunity to thank my great friend Clay Thompson. And I'm really glad to have had a part in this whole program tonight. A while back, a friend of mine who's been chasing me all over North America, a fellow from Ottawa, Canada, called me and he said, "Are you going to stay for DE after you complete the homecoming program?" And I said, "No, I've got to go to Chicago." And he said, "Why do you have to go to Chicago?" I said, "Because we're going to have a birthday party there for Clay Thompson and I wouldn't miss it for the world." He says, "Well, gee whiz, I was hoping to come to DE and see you there." And I said, "Well, we'll see what we can work out." In the meantime, he went down to Mississippi and spent a little time with Tom Morgan, and he told him about the predicament. And Tom Morgan called me at my office and he said, "Joe, what can we do about this situation? Really, Clay belongs at DE." And I said, "You bet he does, because that's really where Clay's renaissance began, right here in Atlanta, Georgia at DE." So I said, "I'll see what I can do." And in the meantime, Tom called Bill Willis, and Bill Willis called me, and I told Bill what I thought ought to happen, and he talked to D.D. Humber. And well, tonight is the fruition of all of that conversation between all of these, amongst all of these people. Somebody a few minutes ago said, "When are we going to get this party underway?" And I said, "As soon as Clay gets back from the bathroom," and it takes a little longer these days. My first exposure to Clay Thompson really goes back to the time that I worked briefly for Sid Williams out here, the chief in Austell. And I remember that day that Sid introduced me to his patients. He said, "This is Dr. Stuckey. He's going to be taking our practice today. I've got to go up and speak at Lyceum." You heard Sid say this afternoon how I had been in his clinic and written down everything that he said. And that was about a week or 2 before. And when he found out he had to go and speak at Lyceum and he had this big practice going, he called my brother in South Georgia and he said, "Can I borrow your brother for a few days?" And I said, "That's fine." My brother said, "That's fine." And so I came up to run Sid's practice. And just before he left at noon that day for the airport, I said, "Sid, just a minute. Would you show me how to work that headpiece and deliver that toggle recoil adjustment?" Dr. Williams said, "What? You don't know how to do a toggle recoil?" I said, "No, I went to the Northwestern College and we were just taught manipulation. We don't know anything about toggle recoil." Well, his face turned ashen gray and then blue and then green, because we had about 100 patients to see that afternoon and 200 the next day, and we had 9 side posture tables. And so he said, "Well, come on in here. I better show you how to do it." And he did. And about the first patient to come in that afternoon was a man that weighed 300 pounds. And he had large earlobes. And so I checked him and I slipped him over on one side and I adjusted him about 5 or 6 good times with that drop headpiece that Clay Thompson invented. Then I went around and checked the other 8, and when I got back to him, I checked him and I said, "Are you better?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm better." And by that time I noticed his earlobe had started to swell. And so when I got back to Thomasville, Georgia, I got a letter from the chief here, and he sent me a check, and he said, "Joe, folks here thought you were tremendous, and the man with the cauliflower ear sends his regards also." Well, that was the first, you probably don't remember that, Chief, but I have never forgotten that, and that was my first exposure to the work of Clay Thompson, those drop headpieces. Of course, I had been exposed to the Thompson head clamp. And then when I got to Wisconsin and I was traveling around there, I went into the Gonstead Clinic in Beloit, Wisconsin. Now, I was a real believer in the work of Merton Gonstead's famous brother, Clarence, but in Merton Gonstead's clinic, they had these funny-looking tables with pedals on the side. And I should have learned something from that experience. I should have noticed those tables. But I didn't, because I was attracted to the man from Mount Horeb. And then I was exposed to that table later on down at DE. I was up to about 60, 65 people a day in the 60s there. And I heard young fellows like Tom Morgan and Gary Stocker get up and talk about seeing over 100 patients a day. And I was up to 60, 65, and I was dying physically. So one Friday night after Tom Morgan's presentation, I pulled him aside at the courtyard of the Hilton, and I said, Tom, how in the world do you see all of those patients? I said, I'm dying. I'm only up to 60 or 65. And Tom says, well, how do you work? And I said, well, I do Gonstead work. He said, that's your problem. You need to get yourself a kaboomer. I said, what's a kaboomer? He said, that's a Thompson table. Now, I always thought these young fellows wore these Clark's desert boots because the chief always used to wear those funny suede shoes with the crepe soles. And I found out later on it wasn't because the chief wore them, but because those crepe soles were really good for pumping the pedals on those old Thompson tables. Well, then, Clay Thompson came to Minneapolis in 1966 with the chief, and they put on a program up there, and after Sid got done with his presentation, Clay got into his work, and I stood around there and I watched him so skeptically because I was really a great believer in the man from Mount Horeb. And I said to myself after I watched him a while, I said, this is the slickest little salesman I have ever seen. I said, this guy is really slick. I said, he is really a pusher. I said, this guy is all sell. And I don't think that this equipment that he's selling here is really all that great. And I don't think chiropractic could possibly be that great like he says it is. But I listened and I paid attention. Then later on, a good friend of mine, Jack Dunn from Minneapolis, invited me to a workshop over in White Bear, Minnesota. And I watched Clay put that little workshop on over there, and then he let me give a cervical adjustment. And Clay will tell you to this day that was the slowest cervical adjustment that he ever saw in his life. He called me after that his famous push doctor, because there was no speed in that adjustment whatsoever. Well, it was my privilege that afternoon then after the workshop to take Clay to the airport. And during that ride to the airport, we were talking about a lot of things, but before we got to the airport, I had already committed myself to buying 2 of those Thompson tables. At that time, they were $26.95 a piece. And while we were sitting there for Clay's plane, Clay said, Joe, while we're sitting here, let me show you something. He said, I got a great treatment for hemorrhoids. And I said, well, now, Clay, wait a minute. What's your treatment for hemorrhoids? He said, well, let me show you. I said, well, Clay, wait a minute. I might want to use this airport again. No, he says, wait a minute. Let me show you how to take care of hemorrhoids. He says, take off your left shoe. So there we were sitting in the airport, and he was gouging this little sore spot on the inside of my left heel, and then later on he showed me how to do it with a drop headpiece. These days I use Arlen Furr's little activator on that point on the inside of my left heel. So that's what I keep it around for, Arlen. I thought you'd appreciate that, Clay. Anyway, I bought those Thompson tables, and we ordered them, I think, in January, and we got them in July. You know, the Thompson table was really reborn here at the DE meetings. That thing was really going nowhere until Clay came down here and demonstrated that thing, and then a fellow from out in New Mexico by the name of Dick Baird bought the first Thompson table at DE. And then about 2 weeks later, he called up and bought another one. And then 2 weeks later, he called up and bought 2 more. And then subsequently bought 2 more. The factory was accustomed to selling about 1 or 2 a month. And they had never sold more than 1 table to any chiropractor. And most chiropractors bought a high-low, used it for 40 years, and then replaced the cushions when the horsehair finally all fell out. So they weren't used to chiropractors buying tables that expensive in that quantity. And after that thing really took off with Dick Baird and Tom Morgan and all of the rest, the factory was pretty soon 2 years behind in orders, but it took 6 months to get mine. And you know, before I took delivery on that thing, I called Kurt Gonstead down in Beloit, Wisconsin, and I said, Kurt, sell me again on those tables that Clay Thompson has sold me. I said, you know, I'm a great believer in your uncle's work, and I'm just not sure I've done the right thing by ordering those things. I've gotten the invoice for them, and I could still cancel them. And Kurt Gonstead said, if you've got those tables coming to your office, you're the luckiest guy in the world. You know, I found out that he was right. I paid $26.95 for those first ones. I still got one of the originals. It's been recovered 7 times. It has 1 new set of cushions. It's really my favorite table in my clinic. And I paid $25.95, $26.95 for it, and I can sell it for twice as much as I paid for it. And that's what you call a good investment, because I've made over $1 million on that 1 table. and I can still sell it for twice as much. And chiropractors come to my office and they say, why would you want to pay so much for an adjusting table? I understand there's $6,000 or $7,000. I said, well, up in Wisconsin, a farmer pays $25,000 for just a plain vanilla John Deere tractor. That's one without air conditioning and stereo and all the rest. So it's a fantastic investment. One time, Clay Thompson came to stay at my home, and that was a delightful experience. And he was staying in the basement. We had the walkout basement made up like an apartment. And in the evening, I went to go down to see Clay, and when I got to the bottom of the stairs, I let out a scream. I said, ah! What's that? And here was a thing about 5 feet 10, standing on its head, dressed in a black leotard and a black turtleneck. Looked like a black grasshopper. And it was Clay Thompson in a full lotus position, standing on his head. And that was really quite an experience. And I remember talking to Marcus Bach, who was a great friend of Clay Thompson's, and he said, you know, I demonstrated the yoga postures to Clay Thompson, and 6 weeks later, on the front page of the Davenport paper, there was Clay Thompson demonstrating all of the yoga postures to the Kiwanis Club. Become an expert in 6 weeks on all the yoga postures. Well, it's really been a fantastic experience. One of the funny things to watch is to watch Clay Thompson walking in Japan with an entourage of little Japanese behind him. You ever walk with Clay Thompson? He walks pretty fast. And when you see these little short legs behind him, it looks like a bunch of ants. They're going a mile a minute. Well, I've had a lot of experiences with Clay Thompson, and really this is the man who has done so much for me. And the day that, I've said this repeatedly, the day that I met Clay Thompson was the greatest day in my life. Because he changed my life in chiropractic, and he saved my life in chiropractic, and he's given me an opportunity to share with others, I think, a fantastic chiropractic approach in the Thompson technique and the Thompson-Darafield analysis. As I told the group up at homecoming, there's one of the great reasons that Clay Thompson's picture hangs on my wall, along with the Chief and B.J. Palmer and Clarence Gonstead, is that Clay Thompson taught me a method that gave me total moment-by-moment internalized authority. And if you listen to Cynthia this afternoon, you found out that it's very important for you to have total authority when you deal with your patients. And that's one of the things, one of the many things that Clay Thompson has given me. And I've had the same experience in trying to find something for Clay. And like I told, Kay and I told somebody in a store, we need something for somebody who has everything. And you don't need a gold Cadillac, Clay, you've already got a gold Mercedes. But here's a little something from Mrs. Stuckey and me and the Stuckey family. You know, back in those days when Clay was so poor, he used to call up and say, don't you need another table? And I'd say, yeah, send me another one. You know, and he was never poor, really. But I have 8 tables. I got up to 8 tables, and I have one in my basement, and all my brothers have his tables, and all my relatives have his tables, and I imagine we've got 25 or 30 Thompson tables in the family now. So we've contributed a whole lot to the Thompson estate. Talk about somebody who has everything. One of the things he told me tonight is that on a recent trip to Australia, he was able to pick up 6 black opals. Very, very, very special gems. So there is a man who really has everything. But here's a little something from Kay and me and the Stuckey family that I think expresses our feeling toward you, Clay. And it is a special feeling, I can assure you. Happy birthday, everybody.
Life is for living and caring and sharing with people we love. What do you say after talk like this? I keep pinching myself, am I really here? I must elaborate a little bit more on what Joe said about the tables at DE. The company reached a real low ebb, and as the orders came in, and they didn't deliver, I'd put on my seminars, and then the doctor would say, when do we get the table delivered? And I'd say, 2 years. Well, I had reached the age about that I was going to retire anyway, and what finally broke the camel's back is that in one DE meeting, 67 doctors ordered tables, and 4 of them were delivered out of that whole group. Now, I was not only discouraged there, but I was discouraged in other places. We always have our low points. I don't think that anything in the world builds character in a person more than to be absolutely flat down one time and then up on the peak the next. So you feel these things. But this movement, the DE movement, has contributed more to scientific chiropractic as a whole than any group that I know, any place. There's an aura in this group, and always has been, that is unbelievable. Now, I don't think anything just happens. All of you here for a reason. You come to school for a reason. I no more could have changed my life than Sid can change his, or Russ Earhart can change his. Each one of us have an itch. But the way innate works is unbelievable. And I want to make one little correction. The head dragon here tonight said that an elephant had 400 muscles in his trunk. I want to tell you something that startled me. I read it a dozen times, investigated it. An elephant has 40,000 muscles in his trunk. Now get that once more. 40,000. Now who could plan such a thing as this? Unbelievable. Absolutely. No more snickering. They're on the line, boys.
Sid says he never could read.
He couldn't count either. But there's going to be, from now on, a revolution in this group. I've been to some other major groups that was big, but I've never seen the enthusiasm individually that there is here. There's something big going on here. And I'm just hoping that I can be around, I don't want to go for, maybe another 20 years. But I'd like to see what you're going to do with it. It's out there. It's the greatest thing in the world to know that you are being run with a power that's everlasting, never changing. That is something. Keep in mind, too, that all of you are different. That's what makes you great. Did you know that they don't need fingerprints anymore? All they need is your voice. No two people ever born had the same voice. Oh, they have people that can imitate, but your voice is part of you. Your eyes are part of you, your ears, your hands, your feet, the whole thing. It's you. Where you go, or where you came from, will always be a mystery. But I marvel at the fact of all the great scientific inventions today, going to the moon, all the calculators today, and all of these machines that figure out everything. And here's a baby born in the hospital and said, just another kid. The greatest miracle of all is life. We've all got it. And does the chiropractor know what he's doing? When somebody comes in, he's going to increase it. I think we all have a place. Sid Williams could no more keep from promoting his college. I can remember when it started, when everybody said it'll never work. It'll never work. It'll never go. And after it did go, they said, well, it'll fail eventually. That's right. I know way it's going to go. Then I read the story about the museum, about how Sid just built him a nice house down there. That is a marvel of a place, a real museum, where they have a caretaker that takes you through and sees all the marvels of our past. Very seldom does anybody ever deserve their fruits while they're alive. BJ didn't, but BJ's getting it. And it was the love of Sid when he saw that sad place with a hole in the roof where all the water was going down and the building was about to collapse. Now today it's almost like a shining diamond. How do you think it got that way? It got that way by somebody that loved something. Sid has a love for chiropractic. He can't quench it. He can't quit it. It's there. It'll always be there till he dies. It'll be there. He has no control over it at all. That's the way it is. And that's the way I hope it'll be for all of you. You have the greatest thing in the world by the tail. And each one of us have contributed some. I see Fred Bart sitting out there. I see my friend Arlo. All of them have something. And it's a DE group that realizes that all of us have a niche in this profession, but not a one of us have all the answers or never will have. But as we combine our thoughts, as we combine our techniques, we will be closer and closer to the real problem of solving the health problems of this sick world. And so I say this, you've got it in your hands, let's see what you do with it. Thank you.
Speaker this afternoon, this evening, who also uses and advocates. I got specializing. Dr. Unler's my third cervical man now. Finally, that ran its course. I got to talking to Glenn more effectively, and I had I had 15 side posture Palmer Thompson headpieces, in addition to those that I made myself play. You know, students at the Palmer College, when Clay would come out, he'd come out with a new invention. Before he had it out for a week, there'd be a dozen more manufacturers in town before Clay could perfect it. He was selling them for $250 a piece, and we was buying them for $125 on the black market. I still got my black market piece. They were worked damn good, Clay. I got Glenn to adjust me here not long ago, and I had that old feeling, you know, where you can't, you know, you get up in the morning and you feel like you hadn't been to bed. I don't know whether you've ever had that type thing, but it began to cause me to think. My joints was cricket, my knees was cricket. I had an accident here about 10 or 12 years ago on a motorcycle. I was doing 125, racing my son, and a damn thing turned over and the carriage come down and smashed my left foot. And I've had a little back problem and leg problem ever since. But the technology that I was getting wasn't doing any good. And I'd always heard about Glenn. He had a fellow named Clements working up at the college, and he does such a vicious technique, I was frankly scared of him. He uses the Palmer Thompson equipment there, and I just kind of looked around and I asked everybody every time I see him working on patients, have we got enough malpractice insurance coverage? He's going to look like to me, he's going to break their head off, crush their neck. He just, nothing light about his adjustment, and frankly it frightened me. And I saw Glenn doing it real well. Come out with this new instrument he had, and it really did a big technicolor show for me. It showed me where I was losing some heat. So I asked him, what kind of x-rays do I need? He told me what to do. I got a little exostosis in my 4th and 5th cervical. Used to use my head for years as a battering ram. It kind of grew together down there. So Glenn come in, read me the instrument, took me into the Thompson room up at the college, I felt at least 112 had been feeling that way for 6 or 8 weeks, and nothing would do any good. I asked him, I said, take it easy on me now. I got a long way to go and I got a lot of work to do. I've been watching Clemens, and frankly, I'm scared to death. I said, don't worry about a thing, just get over there on the table. I'm the doctor now. Okay. Every time he'd palpate, I'd want to look around, want to know if he'd done it already. So he did it on my 5th, and I asked BJ's forgiveness for going that far down on the spine. I've been very close to BJ's technique, you know, it's hard for me to deviate, but I did get a 5th cervical adjustment. I want to tell you, within 15 minutes, less than 15 minutes, I was running around testifying to everybody, showing them how high I could lift my legs. I used to flat foot up on the hood of an automobile, just like a monkey, right straight up. And I flat-footed up on 2 or 3 chairs and showed Glenn and testifying. I wrote him out a testimony about what the 5th cervical adjustment had done. I couldn't believe it. Just because BJ said that it wasn't so, there is no subluxations below the axis. Not even the 3rd. Well, I reevaluated my position after 31 years. Just because the cord does go around the 5th cervical, Glenn, I think you've got something there, and the Thompson equipment has done it, and I want to hear from Glenn Stillwagon.
Only the good die young. I hope he lives forever. That's what I heard somebody say on the hallway before I come in about Clay. But you know, as time goes by and you reflect over the past years, you begin to recall the great times that you had. You know, there's a philosopher that once stated that age has nothing to do with the dates on the calendar. It's the attitude of the mind. And having known Clay over the years, it's his attitude that continues to carry him on. But exciting things have happened in his life. And I know Clay as teacher, and I know him as friend. Dr. Sid talked earlier about Clay's ability as a salesman. And I'm here to tell you that he is one tremendous salesman. Now this goes back a number of years. A time in which Clay had purchased his first Mercedes, and he kept his used car. And it kept sitting around in the driveway, and he insisted on driving the Mercedes all the time. And Peg said, Clay, why don't you sell that car? Clay said, well, I intend to do that now, Peg. I'll take care of it. Some time went by and the car still sat there. Peg said, Clay, I want you to get rid of that car. Promise me you'll get rid of that car. Clay said, okay, I'll do it. I'll run an ad in the paper. So Clay sat down and he ran the ad in the paper. And several weeks went by and the car was still sitting there. Peg said, Clay, I thought you told me you were going to get rid of that car. Clay said, well, I run an ad in the paper. But he said, I wrote that thing out, and I did it so carefully, and I described it so well, that when I read the ad in the paper, it sounded so good, I decided to keep it. But from that time on, a transition took place in Clay's life, and he no longer kept things. He began to give them away. Now we think of the age of 75 as being senior years, and a lot transpires in that period of time. But Clay can go back and remember when the wonder drug of that age was castor oil. Clay's memory. Over the years, began to develop an interest into a philosophy that we all love, and it's a bond that we hold together. And I knew Clay as a teacher. And one of my classes with him was in hygiene, and we used to have some fun in there. And how we used to go round and round on trying to get Clay to explain to us the dominant and recessive characteristics of generation, and the actions of anaerobic and aerobic bacteria. I don't know whether Clay has really learned it yet or not, but I think it all summed up on the day before we had our final. And one of the students in the class, very seriously, stood up and he said, "Dr. Thompson, I understand tomorrow is the day for the final." And Clay said, "Yes, it is, Darrell." "Well, Dr. Thompson, what should we put down as the answers? The right thing or what you told us?" Clay said, "Darrell, you just failed." I think Darrell took the longest of anybody that ever graduated from Palmer College. But as time goes by, you know, we think and we believe that as time changes things, that it really doesn't. Because as things tend to appear to change, they tend to remain the same. And we're living in the age today where we've passed the rock and roll. And we're now into the breakdancing, but Clay hasn't missed a thing, because Clay was telling me just yesterday, that's nothing new. Why, they did that back when I was a kid. We used to say they were taking fits. Look at that kid, he's taking a fit. And they were really breakdancing. So Clay, you see, times really do change by the calendar. But things don't change that much. I believe that a person not only has a teacher, but they also have a friend. And I count Clay as a valued friend, because he's my doctor. Every doctor should have a doctor. Clay's my doctor. Not that he can give me an adjustment from Bettendorf to Monongahela, Pennsylvania, but a doctor's one that you can confide in. And the technique that I've worked and developed and used over the years is a direct outgrowth of what Clay gave us in the drop table. And in those early years of developing, Clay gave me guidance and encouragement, not thinking of it as being competition. His vision was what it could contribute to the welfare of people. Clay is my doctor, and every doctor needs a doctor, especially sometimes during those difficult periods. Someone you can talk with and confide in. Clay and I talk at least once a week, every other week, by phone. And I've found him to be a good doctor. You know, as we're here tonight, and we're honoring Clay for this 75th, my memory went back tonight, just before Clay mentioned it, about being there in the tent when BJ was 75 and was given the gold Cadillac. What a great night, because as a student at that time, a young fellow, my dream was to have the Cadillac. That was many years ago. Clay, when I saw that Cadillac many years later, it had rusted away. It passed away because it didn't last. But the people that are here tonight are giving you a testimony that's worth far more than any gold Cadillac, because it's love that they're expressing. And it's love that they're returning to you for the love you gave to them. But as we're all here tonight, I want to pay special attention to one person here tonight. And that's Peg. because Peg is really the doll. You know, we tend to honor the man, but it's that gal that stays at home. And anybody that's been on the lecture circuit, Ross Earhart can tell you, Arlen Furr, Fred Barge, the others that are here. It takes a special kind of person to be at home and stay there and encourage that man. I want everybody in here now to arise and give a good round of applause for Peg. In closing, Clay, if I could offer a toast, I would just say, I see you've added another candle to that birthday cake. But that's no reason for you to pout. I just hope God continues to give you lots of strength so you keep blowing the candles out.
All right.
Do you not remember Fatima, the belly dancer, and my sister? Charlene, you remember? You remember?
Please, I don't remember.
Jay, last time we saw you, you were at the house of the Seven Fortunes. You remember that? Oh, no, they're not, darling.
Tonight's not the night to bullshit around here. This man is an animal. I tell you, to come to the house, let me tell you, he knows his business, because he adjusts us very well.
Okay, Jay, darling, I understand it's your birthday today. Is that true?
Correct.
Darling, we have something for you, but first you have to rise to the occasion, darling.
Dancing balloons for you.
Yes, we got some dancing balloons for one for you. Keep your heads occupied. There you go.
You can't hold those up, can't you? I know you don't get much practice in that field. Sing as he hasn't come to the house lately.
Oh, darling. Now,
Here we go.
we have Ali Boo Boo here. Do you remember Ali Boo Boo?
Oh, yeah, very well.
Hey, Kinky man. Here.
No, Ali Boo Boo, you remember him. He's your son.
My wife would kill me.
Look at the resemblance. They look very nice, don't they? Darling, could you hold on to Ali Boo Boo? Be careful now. He's not potty trained, okay? Very, very careful.
And to return him to salt and push with our salt and ribs. You like?
Yeah, fine.
Here we go. One.
One for you. You've never been that horny before in your life. I tease you,
of that.
I tell you why. You know, we have come all the way from Far East Doraville, and there we have an ancient custom to read your fortune.
Jay.
Oh, but you see, in the Far East, we don't believe in using the hands. It's a very boring subject. No. Don't get too excited. We're trying to run a clean show here. You're not gonna help enough.
I'm being pleased, I'll tell you that.
Right up here. What I'm going to do is read the bumps on your head. Okay?
Why?
Come on.
Lots
now,
of bumps, eh?
You're a bumpy man. Let me see here. Oh, now look at this guy. He's a guy that likes these sports cars. Come on.
Oh?
Come on, let the word out. He drives a 280Z. Can you see this man driving down the road, checking out
Do
everybody?
you do that, darling?
Right.
How much have you had to drink, darling?
Practically nothing.
Practically nothing. Well, let me see what. Oh, ooh! I also see that you have new fish. Is that true?
Right.
You big time fisherman, eh?
Right.
I hope your rod is big enough to catch the fish, Jay.
My rod is long and limber.
I deserve that one.
Mr. Bump, you
Oh,
Mr.
I'm
Bump
sorry,
Fatima.
darling. I'm sorry. I'm not chiropractic.
This is a very big bump. In fact, that is your fantasy bump, my dear.
I thought that's the one my wife gave me.
I tell you what, we are already fulfilling our fantasy as far as having two women here. You know you always wanted that.
Yeah, but I have to make a choice.
I know you don't. We're going to fulfill your fantasy now. Oh, yes. All you have to do is hold your arms out to the side. I've got some music here for us. It'll be a little bit easier, okay? Now what you're going to do is swing your hips from side to side, okay? Just remember, it's a side to side and not a front to back, okay? It's wearing me out.
I tell you what, darling, since you're such a good sport, we will dance for you by ourselves, okay?
Thank you.
Only if you play Magic Kazoo. Now, we find out if he is a blower or a hummer, okay? Tell you what, we are a chiropractor's nightmare, I think. They do not like belly dancers, I don't think.
Oh, yes. I have a wonderful study club. And it's even better than I thought it was. I must look into this club's activities a little more carefully. It looks like I've been missing something. I'd like to have all the officers of the study club, past and present, stand, please. Well, it's a long night, folks.
Another visitor I'd like to introduce, the president of the Ladies Auxiliary of the International Chiropractors Association, Kathy King. Would you stand up, Kathy? Where are you? Right here. Yes. Mildred Lee, the vice president-elect of the Atlanta Women's Chamber of Commerce, was in the back there. You still here, Dr. Lee? You were here. Dr. Tom Morgan over here, president of Mississippi Board for 15 years. Tom? Dr. Joe Maynard, are you back there in the back somewhere? I saw you a moment ago. Next speaker this afternoon has two sons at Life College, John and Ken Randolph. Where are you boys at? I see John and Ken. Stand up here just a minute. These are Ken people. Mrs. Judith Randolph is a niece of Dr. Clay Thompson. And Judith, you have a partner program. Would you come up, please? Judith Randolph, niece of Dr. Clay Thompson.
No, that was exciting. I can't tell you what an honor and thrill it is for me to be here tonight. I couldn't help thinking when we came up to this gorgeous hotel and came in this beautiful lobby in this room, which I know costs big bucks, right? I'm sure it costs big bucks. How far our profession has come. You younger students have no conception of what it was like 40 years ago, even 20 years ago, to tell you the truth. We used to be kind of compared, you know that country song, third-rate romance, low-rent rendezvous? Well, at one time, chiropractic was a third-rate profession in the eyes of most of the public, and most of us had a low-rent type office years ago. It's wonderful we've come this far. Speaking of BJ's 75th, and I was there too, and that was a big thrill. BJ pitched a circus tent on the Palmer campus, always at the hottest time of year in August. Unbearable in Davenport. Davenport's beautiful any time but August. And I used to think it was because I think he had a philosophy that you ought to, endure things and have all these hardships and, be miserable a while and toughen up or something. I never knew I put it in August. I wish that you who never knew BJ could have known BJ, because there'll never be another one like him. He was so unique, he was so intelligent, and he had just had an awesome presence. When he came in the room, you just didn't speak. It was like, he is here, and he was there. He was regarded as quite a character by a lot of people in Davenport and in other places. I remember when I was a child, he still had his hair long like Buffalo Bill. He was very much a man of his own convictions, and he wasn't afraid, and he had the courage and the nerve to go forward and do the things that he knew were right. He never was afraid. I never met a man quite like him. Going to his home was always a pleasure. It was like going to a museum. It was a museum, really, the things he had in it. He's a unique person, and I was just thinking tonight when they were talking about that no one ever thought, or not many people thought, that Sid could establish a school over here. There's quite a few similarities, Sid. I think you've probably been told before. You've had the courage of your convictions to go ahead and do something that people said couldn't be done, and you've done it, and you've done it in a very, as we say in the country, uptown way, and we appreciate that very much. Our profession today is something else, and I mean that sincerely. It is something else in the best way. I have been so privileged, and by accident of birth, if there's an accident of birth, I've had very special men in my life. My father was a very talented and charming man. That's Clay's brother. You'll have to agree with that. I've got a wonderful husband, one of the greatest chiropractors in the world. I've got two wonderful sons that are going to be the next two greatest chiropractors in the world, I hope. I've got a brother who's a minister I'm very proud of, and Clay has helped along in his studies and times when it was very hard for him, and we will always remember him for that. I had the privilege of knowing and loving BJ. I had the privilege of living under Neb Quigley's roof for several years. He's another one of my uncles, and there's just no one else in the world like Neb Quigley. He's one of the most intelligent people, one of the wittiest people. Those of you who had him for a teacher may have never discovered that. He was probably one of the hardest teachers you ever had, but he's a very witty man. And Clay Thompson. There's no one else in the world like Clay. Now, you've heard a lot tonight about Clay Thompson, the man and the doctor and the inventor and the seminar speaker. I want to tell you about Clay Thompson, the man. My mother always said that she thinks the reason she married my father was that he made her laugh all the time telling her stories about his brother Clay. And I think that's probably true, because Clay is one of the most humorous people you'll ever know. A lot of times he doesn't mean to be, he just is. He does funny things, you know, without thinking sometimes. A while ago, one of the doctors made the remark about talking about, well, Clay Thompson never was poor. Well, I'm here to tell you, Clay Thompson, as far as material things, was very poor. Clay Thompson is the Abraham Lincoln, maybe, of chiropractic. He came from a very humble background. He came from a home that was always full of love and laughter. I never knew anyone that loved to laugh and laughed more than my grandmother. So full of joy. And she and my grandfather, up to the time he died, were like sweethearts. I mean, you know, she would walk by and he would pull her down in his lap and things. And it was just always fun, but they've never had material possessions. Clay was born in the territory of Wyoming. My grandfather was out there building the railroads. My grandmother said the night he was born, they were in, like, had a hotel room or something, you know, where they were having to live. And the doctor sent someone down to tell the dance hall girls and the men in the saloon to please be quiet because the lady was in labor. And she said they never heard another sound all night. But it was very Wild West, and you were still just a baby, I guess, when they came back to Keysburg, weren't you, Clay? He's very young. And Keysburg, Illinois is a very, very small town. It was kind of a thriving river town, really, I guess, at the time Clay grew up, but by our standards today, it's very small, very humble town. The main industry was a button factory. They cut buttons out of the mussel shells, you know. Had a wonderful childhood growing up. He displayed at quite an early age, he had an unusual wit. Clay was not an ordinary child. When he was about 4, they were at a town picnic, and now Clay, you know, was small and dark. My father was, when he grew up, was very, you know, large and blonde and everything. But a lady at the picnic was just remarking, you know, the little boys were standing there, and about how different they looked. And she said, well, Clay said, how come you're so dark and your brother is so fair? And he said, well, ma'am, I was born in the dark of the moon, and Frank was born in the light of the moon. Now, my grandmother says he came up with this himself, so evidently he was thinking early. Unfortunately, like a lot of great men, he flunked first grade. The teacher said she knew he never heard anything she said because he was talking all the time. So she flunked him. Now, that's true. This is true. I'm not telling, you know. One time, he was reminding me of this tonight. He'd set some traps. And he was trapping, heaven only knows what, coons or anything he could, I guess. And he set some around the graveyard. So he got up about 4 one morning to go check his traps. And while he was at the graveyard, a cow happened to wander into the graveyard. But all Clay saw was this just kind of indistinct shape, you know, coming down through the tombstones. And he ran home as fast as he could, and he got home, and his mother says, where's the dog? And he said, he'll be here in a little bit. This is true. This is true. He's an absent-minded professor. Any of you who've been around him 10 minutes know this. Now, how he has kept from losing that Canarius violin, I'll never know, because I think every time he goes off, he's not going to come home with it. He forgets things a lot, like his diamond rings in the motel rooms and things like this, but luckily, he always recovers them. He left them with you too, huh? This happens a lot. You have to go pick up around him. When they were little, Clay started playing the violin when he was a very young boy. Now, of course, his father would have not called it the violin, it was the fiddle. Clay played the fiddle. My father played the cornet and the piano, and they used to entertain for a lot of church functions and things. And when they were little, my grandmother had bought them special suits. They had a special program at church, and they had little Buster Brown suits, you know, for little short pants. So they got all ready, and they were excited, and they got there, and they started the program. And everything went fine until Clay raised the fiddle to play, and he'd forgotten to put on the pants. And you couldn't see it until he raised, you know, because the pants were short. So Clay thought all the people were shaking with emotion, you know, at the song. He didn't realize that they're all laughing out there, you know, or trying not to laugh. Now, Clay was so good on his fiddle that he won a scholarship with a very famous, world-famous teacher at the Chicago Conservatory. So we went up there one summer, and my father went with them, and they worked in a drugstore, and heaven only knows what they did while up there. But they lived on the opposite side of Chicago to where he took lessons. So they had to take about 3 different streetcars. They had to keep transferring to go across town for lessons. So they're going across one day, and they've been on like 2 hours trying to get over there. They're on about the 3rd streetcar. And all of a sudden, Clay jumps up, and he said, "My God, Frank, this is the wrong day." Father says, "What do you mean it's the wrong day?" He said, "This isn't the day for my lesson." And Father was mad. He said, "You probably already had a fiddle in the case," and he didn't. He forgot the fiddle too. Another time, he had my grandfather with him, and this is back, I guess, in the early 40s. And he had to go to, I believe it was the courthouse or post office one there in Davenport. It was a big building that sat on a square block and had an entrance on every side. So he left my grandfather in the car, and he went inside to transact the business. When he came out another door, couldn't find the car, reports the car stolen to the police. The police, they get the information, they said, "Well, don't worry about it." Said, "You know, have you got money to go home? Can you get home?" "Yeah, you had bus fare." And they said, "You know, we'll start looking for it and we'll call you." When he got home, Peg said, "Clay, the police have called, they've got your car and the guy that took it." When he got down there, the police said, "You know, this guy had the nerve to claim he was your father." That's true. This is true. Clay was a great salesman. That's true. One time, one of the jobs he had, he took a job selling hearing aids, and he'd go door to door. This is which I forgot this one too, bro. But they used to, and I don't know if they did this to impress the farmers or if they actually had to do this, but they would take a mold of a person's ear before they, you know, they're going to order the hearing aid. They had to put Vaseline, and then they poured plaster of Paris in, say. But Clay got to talking, he forgot the Vaseline. He poured the plaster of Paris in the farmer's ear, and hardens, and lo and behold, he can't get it out, so he has to chisel it out. Most people would have lost that sale, but not Clay. Now, Clay still made the sale. At one time, Clay was the #1 salesman in the United States, I believe, with the big correspondence school. Wasn't that right? LaSalle or something. So he is a salesman, make no mistake about it. He loves gadgets, you know. He had a speedboat one time. He loved this speedboat. And he'd just go like crazy in it when he got in it, you know. He was just, you know, if you like adventure and don't mind risking your life, you get in there with him and have a good time. If you're a nervous person, if you didn't get in the speedboat with Clay. One time he's up in Wisconsin visiting us, and he and Nip are out. They're out, you know, in this terrific speedboat. There's some guys sitting very silently, you know, peacefully sitting, fishing along, you know, in this boat. Clay comes along and he just roars by them. And as he goes by, his propeller catches their lines, and the poles are just jerked, you know, out of their hands. They'll get to see our equipment's gone. Clay whips the boat back around, comes right up to them, and they're just practically to capsize with the waves, and he says, "How's the fishing?" But he always pays for it. See, he paid it right away, you know. But he sure ruined the fishing. I used to love to go to hear Clay's lectures when he was teaching hygiene. And they weren't exaggerating about the hygiene class either. You know, Clay should have taught philosophy. This was always his strongest point. You know? I enjoyed it though. I can't bring up some of the things he taught in hygiene, but they were interesting. One morning he decided, you know, that he was going to get a mic that morning. So I was walking down the hall with him, and we go down, we get the amplifier, and all this equipment was big back then, and he gets the mic, and we get all this and these cords, and carry it back to the classroom, sets him up, plugs things in, runs wires, pins the mic on his neck, walked around all during the class using it, never turned it on. Clay knew the difference, so nobody said anything. The story about the car is true. That's the second time you did that. My father told me When they were going to Palmer, you know, it was during the war, and you couldn't get tires. You know, you couldn't get sugar, couldn't get anything. Had a car, and the tires were worn out, and, you know, you couldn't get any tires, and he told his, you know, my father, I'm going to sell the car. Wrote an ad. Father asked him a week later if he'd sold the car. He told him the same thing. He said, my God, I'd be crazy to sell that car. I said, it's wonderful. Have you read the ad? He does these things seriously, I'm telling you. During the Depression, times were really hard, and I know at one point, Clay, the button factory closed in Keithsburg. This was the main industry, and Clay cut buttons in the basement out of the shells that they would dredge up out of the riverbed, because I remember as a little girl going down there and asking my grandmother what all the shells were doing down in that cellar. And that's what he did, and he supported his family doing this. He married Peggy, and they had a daughter, Mary Ann, who's 6 months younger than I am. So for her sake, I shan't tell you how old she is. That's a sneaky way, isn't it? And back in, what, 42, 43, 44, when did you enter Palmer?
45.
45? Okay, I thought it was a little later than that, or a little earlier. My father claims that he made Clay enter Palmer. That Clay kept saying, I can't do it, Hank. You know, I'm a family man. I can't do it. I've got too many responsibilities. But they did enter. And Clay hadn't been there long when he realized he had found something. Clay had had some serious illnesses in his life. He was always looking for cures. One time he went to the Royal American Show's Carnival there in the levee at Davenport, and the guy was selling seawater. And he was telling about the miracle, you know, curative powers of seawater. So Clay bought a few cases. So he had tried several things before. But not long after entering Palmer, Clay found what he had been looking for all his life. And he knew that this was the answer. And we had something here that could make people well and keep people well, not just try to treat some symptoms or cover up pain. And Clay had remarkable cases while he was still in Palmer. He really did. He had some things that would bring tears to his eyes besides the patients he was treating. They bought a modest house on East Pleasant Street, and Clay practiced in his basement for a few years. And he had patients coming to him from as far away as Indiana. And right in front of Clay's house, there was a whole like 2-block area was taken up by a big grade school, and the play yard was between his house and Locust Street, and you could see straight over. There was a drugstore straight over on Locust. And the drugstore decided to move down the street. They wanted more room. And Clay decided he would take the plunge, and he bought the building, and that's where he established his clinic. And I probably don't need to tell you much about his clinic because you've probably heard a lot about that. And many of you may have served as interns in Clay's clinic while you were at Palmer School. Clay was such a good salesman on chiropractic. He had a man come in one day that really wasn't sure if chiropractic was the answer for his problem. Clay sat him down and talked to him about 15 or 20 minutes and told him how wonderful chiropractic was and what it was going to do for him and how good he would feel. And after he finished talking, the guy got up and he says, Dr. Thompson, I'm going to thank you. He says, I just can't believe what chiropractic has done for me. He says, I've never felt so good in my life. Shook his hand and left. This is true. This is true. So he taught at Palmer for years, and he always was inventing things. This is Clay's way. He's always got something in his mind. He had his first patent stolen from him, the first thing he had, and he got a little bit smarter then on that. He's got a very inventive man. I remember things he used to just rig up around the house, and he's always liked to putter around the house. Peggy didn't like it too well. And I'm going to tell you about something that happened because I think it's so long, so many years ago, but I don't think the government can get him for this, I hope. If you know, don't tell it outside of here. You remember the big blackout? The whole East Coast was blacked out several years ago. Well, I'll tell you what happened. Now, this is the truth. Peggy will verify. Clay there was something wrong with the heat pump in their home. So Clay couldn't find anybody could fix this. Nobody could fix it. He was really aggravated, so he decided to fix it himself. So he got the diagrams down, and he looked the whole thing up, and he decided it was one little fuse in this thing. So he goes to town, he buys it, he comes home, he takes the entire furnace apart, he installs the fuse, puts it all back together. Now by this time it's dark, you know, and he said he just thought to himself, you know, well, he's going to throw the switch back on. You know, it's either going to work or it's just going to blow all the lights in the neighborhood. The instant he threw the switch, it blew all, you know, everything goes dark. And he looks out, you know, There's no lights on in his house. There's no lights in the neighbor's house. There's no street lights. There's no lights in the distance. And Clay thinks, my God, I've done it now. So he gets the portable radio and he turns it on, you know, and they're coming on the emergency, you know, and they said, don't panic. Said there's something caused a blackout, so we don't know what it is. A little bit they said the entire eastern seacoast, you know, is blacked out, you know, and they tell it all the places that are blacked out, so we don't know what it is. And pretty soon somebody comes on and they said, well, the only thing we know, it could have been just a very minor thing, you know, that caused this. We don't know what it is. Peggy had gone to the grocery store. So about this time, Peggy comes home and she says, Clay's sitting there with a candle and the radio, and it's just ashen white. And she says, my God, Clay, what's the matter? And he says, lock the door, Peg, and don't answer the phone. And she said, well, what is it? He said, I've just blacked out the whole eastern United States. I think he did it. But not on purpose, so I don't think, you know, that'll count. I'm so glad he's gonna play for you tonight. It's always a big thrill to me. He's got a violin. It's remarkable. The history of the violin is remarkable, and how he got it from a millionaire in Rock Island, kind of reclusive, you know, man. And he flew over there in a terrible storm, chartered a plane to go one night to get the violin. And he was so proud of this. He was telling us all about it one night, about how old it was and when it was made, you know, and who made it and everything about it. And my cousin, Barb Quigley, was sitting there. She's about 14 years old, you know, and he's telling what the worth of the violin is. She said, oh my gosh, think how much it'd be worth if it was new. But Clay is a remarkable man. He's one of the most loving men I've ever known. He loved his family. He took better care of his parents than anyone I ever knew, and he loved them more. He always said he had the sweetest little mother in the world. He did. He's a remarkable man. I love him.
Thank you, Judy. The story about the electricity being fiddled with the furnace is true, word for word. And I can tell you that I was shook up.
Judy, that was a good story, Clay, the whole thing. It was excellent. Clay mentioned here earlier that BJ got a gold Cadillac. Now, Dr. Plum and I spent the better part of the evening. We have ordered. You recall when Jack Kennedy was president of the United States, he had a Brumby rocker manufactured in Marietta, Georgia. Well, that was a very therapeutic thing for him with his back. Jimmy Carter was president of the United States, and he has a Brumby rocker. And the White House has a dozen Brumby rockers on the front porch in Washington today. So we have ordered Clay a special Brumby rocker, and Dr. Plum and I, the thing didn't come in. So I called the mayor of Marietta. I went to the college up here and got the mayor, who I didn't support last time. Quite a feat in itself, but he's getting closer to us because he got to run again. And he's supporting the Ladies for Life run, so we call the mayor. Mayor calls us back, tells us Buddy Darden, the United States Congressman's got one. So we call the United States Congressman, he don't have one. So we call the state representative. All this is happening in about an hour. We call the state representative, Al Burris. He's got one. Now it's been sent to Chicago. His partner, his business is one of the top 10 businesses in the state of Georgia, $50 million chicken business. So we get Al Burris to call his partner who's got this Brumby rocker, and Clay, that's what we've got for you, and I want you to sit down there and demonstrate it. We didn't get you a gold Cadillac, we got you a famous Brumby rocker manufactured in Marietta, Georgia. DJ needs a Cadillac, and you'll need that one sooner than later. We have another gift for you and your lovely wife, Peg, from Life College of West. Dr. Plum has assured us that he's got a a nice gift coming for you. Dr. Nail and I and Dr. Hummer and the administration of Life College wish to give you and your wife a watch. Come up here, Clay. It's a beautiful thing from Life College, an alligator band, and signified on it is the lasting purpose, our great need around the world. That's yours, Clay.
I can get rid of my Timex now.
That's right. And Peg, we got one for you up here, if you'll come up.
Just gorgeous.
That's a handsome one.
That is a beauty.
Like it. Get around your neck.
I think I got all these people snowed.
So we love you and we thank you both very much.
It's been my pleasure over the years to know Dr. Thompson. I was a patient of his in Davenport and a student of his in Davenport. And over the years, we knew each other through the college as I taught at Palmer, and then down here in Georgia, and then now up on the West Coast. One of the things that I've always known Clay to be fond of is a nice glass of wine. And being in the backyard of the Napa Valley, the college has procured a case of the wine that was served at the occasion of the dinner between the Queen of England and the President of the United States recently in San Francisco, and that will be shipped to you and Peggy in Bettendorf, via case of Windsor brewed champagne from the college. Thank you.
We're going to have a rare privilege on this 75th birthday. Before we cut the cake and sing happy birthday to our dear friend Clay, he's going to play for us. He's a member of the Davenport, Iowa Symphony. He has his violin here. He's going to give us a rare privilege for us to hear him on his birthday.
I never played this late for a good many years. I used to play hoedowns when I was 14 years old. All we got out of it was a cup of coffee and a stale donut. But I loved it. And it is hard to keep up the practice. Anymore, I have to practice hard to keep from getting any worse, you know. I'm never going to get any better. But it's a rare privilege for me to introduce my accompanist, Laurel Humber Harrell. She is just a magnificent musician. You always hear about the one that's going to play, but the accompanist is always kind of in the background. I can tell you this, that the accompanist makes or loses the deal. And so we'll attempt a couple of numbers here. We'll play a little classic, and we always have to have a foot stomper or two, the old ones that used to be your DD, the old DE days years ago. And so we'll attempt it. First we'll play Kreisler's Liebesfreude, or Love's Joy. I think we can use some joy around here. I'll never forget one of the times I played at DE, and I had a hard time keeping my fiddle tune. And I screwed around with it, and I finally got it right, and then DE got up and said, "Thank you, Dr. Thompson."
Wait till Saturday night.
Concentration went to hell when I took that microphone. I want to dedicate this next number to the head dragon, Sid. It's a simple little tune, but it's a beautiful tune. Dirt's souvenir. Now, Dirtla visited a little town in Iowa. Whenever they visited with these friends they left, he composed a little tune. And sometimes I like to demonstrate some of it. For instance, when he met his friends, he said, "Hello, friend." Then you see the train coming. Then you'll hear the end again. Goodbye, old friend. Okay.
Dr. Clay. Thank you, Dr. Clay. Thank you too, Laura.
I mentioned that Laura, of course, grew up in DE and just announced just last week that she's going to make Becca grandparents come March. So we're looking forward to that. Laura, thank you for coming. Birthday party wouldn't be complete if we didn't have a cutting of the cake and sharing of that cake and singing happy birthday to the one to be honored. So Dr. Clay, if you'll come on forward now, we'll have the cutting of the cake with you and Peg over, and want to get some photographs of that. And we'll all share in the cake. While Clay's making his way, we want to thank all of you folks for being here tonight and helping in the celebration of Clay's 75th birthday. And for you people who shared a special place on the program and sharing with us, all of us, the words of what Clay has meant to you and to the chiropractic profession, we greatly appreciate y'all's participation. Okay, did you go over? Can we bring the knife out now for the cutting of the cake and let Dr. Thompson and Peg there take a first slice out of that cake? We've got plenty of cake for everyone, and we'd be happy to have you all share in. And let's start it, crank up back there, Newton, if you will, and we'll get into happy birthday. All right. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Clay. Happy birthday to you. All right. Hey, Clay, happy birthday.
Thank you. I'll have the first bite. It's delicious. I can see that. You all come now.
Hey, that's great. I want to pay special thanks to Williams Manufacturing Company, too, who had the idea of this celebration in the first place and was happy to share it with us here at DE. Let's give them a round of applause. Williams Manufacturing Company. Thank you so much, Williams, for coming back. Those of you who'd like to come up and share in this cake, come right ahead. It's going to be replenishing our punch bowl so you can have cake and punch.
Ready, give me my piece so I can go to bed. Give me a big piece too, I don't want the flowers. Boy, you can have, I waited 2.5 hours for this cake.